To Justicar Anastas de Zagreb. Greetings, Your Grace. I write with a report on the political situation in the domain of Las Vegas. This summary is for Your Grace's records, in accordance with the procedures outlined from Vienna. But the most important information is this. The domain has vanished. Most of the native kindred of the city are gone. Some of them are said to have disappeared in plain sight of their servants. I have launched an investigation, but I believe this disappearance is tied to the conspiracies which swirl around the city. I have identified 3 of these conspiracies, known respectively as the Aquila, the Argos, and the Nautilus. Each of these groups have ambitions tied to the upcoming conclave, and each seem to have engaged in years of manipulation of the population of the city, engaging the domain's citizens in agendas and missions to advance these ambitions. Broadly, the Aquila seems more focused on the interests of the Camarilla order, the Argos more on Libertas, often focusing on the Anarchs. And the Nautilus? The Nautilus is the most alien of the 3, and it seems most interested in chaos, though it does seem to have ties to the Sabbat. This is the political situation in summary. In 2016, clans Toreador, Ventrue, and Tremere oversaw a great diplomatic achievement with the Rome Accords. These accords restored the domain of Las Vegas to the Camarilla from the Independent Alliance, and created a peaceful understanding between our ancient sect and their new one. To most, this appeared to be a diplomatic coup for the Independent Alliance, who now was free to establish their embassies in the great courts of the West. But in reality, it was Clan Tremere who profited most from this arrangement. The Independent Alliance was facing a crisis as a supernatural disaster rising from some necromantic experiment threatened to breach containment and put the Masquerade itself at risk. The Alliance sought out the expertise of the Tremere, of course, and the price of that expertise was the return of the city. As Your Grace knows, the Tremere clan took full advantage of the opportunities for research and development to follow. The domain of Las Vegas was taken under the leadership of Prince Erich Falkenhayn, the descendant of Prince Wilhelm of Berlin, a Ventrue of distinguished pedigree and a strong hand for guiding the new domain back to the Ivory Tower. Prince Falkenhayn quickly restored order from the chaos. 3 years after he took the city under his control, Prince Falkenhayn called for a regional conclave to be held within the domain. Your Grace seemed to have known that this was to occur even before it was announced by the prince, which dovetails with what I understand Justicar Lucin's involvement in the mandate for this conclave. But the city lies close to the frontier of Sabbat territory, and so any such meeting comes with risk. I wonder, is that why you, Madame Guy, and Lady Lucin were so interested in it taking place there? The risk manifested a few months after the announcement as a Sabbat war party tore across the desert and killed Prince Falkenhayn and his closest court officers. His successor was a Brujah named James Connery, who approached the throne alternating between authoritarianism and laissez-faire styles of rule. It would be revealed later that James Connery was in fact a Sabbat infiltrator in service to the dreaded Black Hand. And both he and his child Renee Boone had risen to create chaos in the domain. This traitor prince left the domain as a Sabbat crusade passed through it, taking with them highly confidential intelligence about ongoing Camarilla operations. In his wake, another Brujah named Ariadne rose to seize Praxis and lead the city through the turbulent Sabbat invasion. She demonstrated bravery in the face of the enemy, and was primed to serve as a potent weapon in the Camarilla against its enemies. Her rule was cut short, however, after the public execution of the domain's harpy brought a murder of harpies down on the city. Prince Ariadne was killed in retaliation, and the domain was seized by the warlock prince Matthias Habsburg. Under Matthias, many investigations into the classified nature of a town called Salvation were undertaken. What information I have about this place is outlined in Report 0479, dispatched 3 months ago. Likely because of his fixation with the more arcane elements of his domain, Prince Matthias was unseated by his Primogid Council during the global pandemic. In his place, a Toreador named Cornelius Wentworth rose to power. Prince Wentworth went on to guide the Kindred of the domain through the worst of the pandemic, leading his domain against hunter groups which sought to take advantage of the quarantine to identify and murder Kindred as they hunted. He proved a stabilizing influence on the domain, but his prestation debt eventually caught up with him, and he was drawn away to the court of Buenos Aires to deal with personal matters. His relationship with Callisti y Castillo is at the time of this report still unknown. His successor, the Gangle Prince Ayla Cord, proved to be a great warrior and leader of the city. Prince Ayla would launch a campaign to identify and strike at the Sabbat, using her relationship with the Anarchs to successfully deploy them as foot soldiers of the Ivory Tower. It was in her role as warlord that Prince Ayla would meet her end, in one final struggle against the Sabbat where she was able to lay low a powerful Sabbat leader. Her successor, a toreador named Jocelyn de Valois, is too recently risen to have made an impression on the domain, but I already have reports on his loyalty to the Camarilla and his close relationship to Prince Galen Fisk. Much of this is known to you, Your Grace, but I am disturbed by what I do not know. I do not know how these conspiracies tie into the matter of this place, this salvation, but I believe these issues are linked. I will inform you as information becomes available to me. Your loyal servant, Archon Alexander Vorskayev,